Greetings everybody, welcome to a new round of the MTGA Tasting Notes where we dive into each and every one of our releases as they make their way out into the world. This is always one of my favorite tasting notes to do because it is for one of our most popular wines, and that is our Let It Run Cabernet Franc, our 2022 vintage that we are releasing in the winter of 25. This is a wine that many of you are familiar with. And some of you are big Cabernet Franc fans. Some of you have learned about kind of like the cult following that it has here in Napa and around the world. It's a variety that is very typically used for more blending purposes. It's a great addition to your red blends, your Cabernet Sauvignons, even Merlots. And it's something that very rarely I feel you see just as a standalone, as 100% Cabernet Franc, as this is. Very, very typically, it's nice to have it as kind of a tool in the cellar as a winemaker so you can utilize it for a few different lots. And it can be very, very tough to make, in my opinion, an excellent standalone Cabernet Franc that you don't need to blend with anything else or have anything added to it in a small percentage to kind of like round it out. Now, the reason for that is, and I think Cabernet Franc kind of walks this line of, you know, if you pick it a little too early and produce it a certain way, it leans more into its greener, really kind of feisty characteristics. I think if you've had any Cabernet Franc from the Loire Valley in France, definitely kind of more of that realm. And if you go a little too far and it gets a little too overripe, it gets really jammy, a little flabby. There'll still be some good tannin there, but it doesn't have like this nice brightness and lift. So I think if you're trying to produce excellent Cabernet Franc as a standalone, you really have to kind of walk that line in between and say, hey, we need this to be bright. It needs to have this kind of great structure to it, but it also needs the fruit characteristics to kind of buffer that a little bit and have just this really nice kind of sexy tone across the board. It's a super fun wine to make for that reason because it's almost a challenge kind of no matter what. Every year, it's a lot like Pinot Noir in that way where it can be a little finicky. In the cellar in its youth, it just has a tendency to be a little funky. And as time goes on, it slowly kind of massages itself out and kind of grows into what you want it to be. For this lot, this is something that was aged in 100% new oak, just one brand new barrel, something to really kind of have a great influence on the wine. And luckily enough, we found a great barrel selection that doesn't overpower the fruit characteristics itself. So it's this nice yin and yang of getting kind of those toasty, spicier oak characteristics, but maintaining kind of the great fruit characteristics that Cabernet Franc has to offer. So let's go and dive into this thing, shall we? It is, I mean, right out of the gate, you get a little bit of those earthy tones, a touch of like more blue fruits, I think, in Cabernet Franc. It's something I typically pick up when they're a little bit riper and kind of from the Napa areas. They kind of get that like blueberry, boysenberry, maybe blackberry kind of thing going on in there. Not so much the red fruit side of things, and not so much like your black cherry or plum or fig or anything along those lines. Definitely tends to be a little bit more in that kind of darker fruit, but blue fruit kind of range. I always tend to pick up like a little bit of like a brambliness to Cabernet Franc as well. It kind of has like that slightly earthy tone to it, or kind of that green tone that I mentioned that kind of massages itself out. So it's not like some of you have probably had a big red wine that had like that underripe, like green, like bell pepper kind of characteristic. That's something that we try and avoid for something like Cab Franc. We want to let this fruit ripen up enough that you don't get those really harsh green tones and that they kind of become more savory. Think of like your rosemaries or sages, something that has like this great kind of herbal quality that adds complexity to the wine and doesn't detract from it. Now, on the nose, the fruit characteristics still really, really pop. You get a little bit of the toastiness of the oak, and it's more like woody, like kind of that cedar box kind of thing that you have going on. The spice characteristics, especially in a young wine, they're kind of hidden in there. Like you experience them a little bit, but because of how big and bold this wine is in its youth, you have to wait a little bit of time, or you have to let it aerate, decant it a little bit, give it some time so that you get some of those other kind of spice characteristics hidden behind some of the fruit and the kind of bigger, robust, woody tones from the barrel. And this is probably one of the bolder, more tannic Cabernet Francs that we've made. You can feel it. This is a great wine that you feel like you can chew on it. This is like your meat and potatoes, like get yourself a great ribeye steak and throw it on the grill kind of red wine. What I love about this is that it has this great kind of grip and it reaches out and grabs a hold of you. But then it just kind of fills your palate. It's very soft and gets very plush very quick. And you're like, oh shoot, like you expect it to kind of be, it almost feels initially like the iron fist in the velvet glove. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh wait, there's no iron fist in there. It's actually a lot softer than you think it's gonna be, which is kind of nice. It has this kind of deceiving structure right out of the gate. And it's very, very mellow and just kind of hangs with you. And as you taste it, man, you get a little bit more of those oaky, kind of spicier tones. It's a lot more of like that baking spice kind of thing, a little bit of like that like clove or nutmeg and vanilla that we get from the barrel extraction on this. It's just clicking on all cylinders. This is something that we typically bottle in August after 2 years of barrel aging. We let it sit for about 6 months. And at this point, it's like, okay, here it is. It's ready to go. Because of how big and bold this 2022 is, I mean, this is a wine that you could hang on to. If you're into aging wines, you don't have to be in a hurry to drink this. If you love that big intensity of red wine, then you probably can drink it sooner rather than later. Decanting it right now, always an option because of how young it is, and it only gets better as you kind of swirl it in the glass and give it a little bit more air. It gets a little bit more expressive. If you happen to be a wine nerd like us, throwing it into a decanter will certainly help. I love making this wine. It's been such a great addition to the MTGA lineup over the last, almost 6 years now. We started making Cabernet Franc in 2019 was the first vintage of it. It's been a blast. Of course, we have our lovely 8-bit inspired gaming label. We had to go with Galaga this year because that was my personal favorite at the arcade. What I would save up my quarters for when going to the movie theater in downtown Napa, that's now a parking lot, or the bowling alley. Some of you might know Napa Bowl in Napa as well. Those were the cool like arcade spots. And this was always one of the arcade games that I would just dive right into. So as usual, had to stick with some of my gaming roots with this label. This is something that is going out exclusively through our wine club this winter. We only made that 1 barrel of it, so it's going to be right around or less than 300 bottles all said and done. So hopefully you're able to snag a little bit of this. If not, be sure to head to our website, mtgawines.com. In the upper nav there, you can find a little more information on the wine club, this wine specifically, to dive into it. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Of course, it's a pleasure to share some of these wines and kind of details all about them. Hopefully we'll see you out here at the winery so you can taste some of these guys and get to know them a little bit better. And if you are enjoying them as a part of your wine club shipment, I hope you enjoy them to the fullest once they arrive at your door. Cheers.